So moving on, recognizing that science is operating from the ground up, so to speak, let's see how scientists might go about evolving a theory of awareness. Now, as I say, awareness is my generic term for consciousness that is independent of the body, and there's two elements to that I should have clarified earlier. You can have awareness at a distance, but where you're still receiving information from within the awareness that you have, in other words, consciousness, in a body. But you can also have awareness, in theory, that is independent of the body. And, does that exist? And so there's two elements to explore if you want to explore these kind of questions. Can you have awareness that is beyond the limitation of the body while in the body, and can you have awareness that exists independently of the body? But let's say that science had a little bit of a first tentative look at awareness. Now, they might come up with something like a field of consciousness theory. All very rational, not going to mention the G word, not going to have any God, no religion, no. We have the answer, but we can posit that there is a field of consciousness. Now, bear in mind I'm doing this slightly tongue-in-cheek in the sense that, and there probably are people who have postulated this, but I'm doing it slightly tongue-in-cheek to illustrate how science might evolve their authorized version of what a lot of us take for granted. And so we might have this field of consciousness, and let me say that science has done an extraordinary job, and they actually have 99% of all they need for a model of awareness, at least as far as it applies to human beings, because they've got up to in the string theory, which is sort of somewhat derided, somewhat experimental, not quite sure where it's going. They do have the key concept of multidimensional space, and we could highlight, but we won't jump there in this video, that actually their 10-dimensional model is basically it. They're basically there. And we might touch on how close science and cosmology and an awareness model that I take for granted are actually in harmony. But in this video, let's consider a field of consciousness and just see how they might evolve it. So hypothetically, they may come up with a theory that they have a field of consciousness, that a person might be surrounded in this field. They might not be able to detect it, and we can touch on that in another video. But they can posit that it might explain some of these phenomena, like the 100 monkey syndrome, or whatever it is, or telepathy, that and this is what I mean, that you might get to a point where they give you the blessing that, you're allowed to be telepathic now because that's now authorized. It's like, well, sorry mate, that's just hubris and your arrogance. What a lot of us take for granted has been around for thousands of years, or has been intrinsic to being human. Just because you're finally allowing it to be real doesn't mean that we should keep you as the high priest. On the contrary, it really ought to put you in your place and say, look, it's great, we love that you're doing your work, we love that you're enjoying your hobby, but if you don't mind, we're going to get on with our lives, and this has been around for a long time. If they could come up with a detector, they might find, and they probably can detect an energy field around the body. I think Kirlian photography, has shown energy fields around plants, including where you cut the plant and the energy field is still there for a bit. So there may be an element of constructive ignoring that they actually can do things, but they don't want to do things because it would threaten their religion. But if they had this field of consciousness, they might then be able to embrace a theory and come up with a theory as to how we can have things like telepathy, healing and what have you. And then they might start to be able to, I mean, let's say they had a Large Hadron Collider and a Hubble for awareness, and they started to notice that things had fields of what they were positing may be consciousness, maybe awareness around them. It would be very interesting for them to see that there's this energy blob or field which detaches when leaves the body, and this might give them the authority and the permission to look at the concept of something as sort of surviving death. And what is this thing? They might find that the planet, the sun, stars have consciousness. They might detect thousands of blobs of consciousness floating around the solar system. It's like the search for intelligent life. They might find that, well, actually there's they don't actually have to go to another galaxy. It's all right here watching us making complete idiots of ourselves. Who knows? But the point is that what I want to highlight here is not that to put forward a theory and say I have the answer. I have a perspective, and it's based on my experience and what have you. But the point is that science is limiting perspective of, oh no, we're only going to do it this way. They could evolve, depending on their cleverness and what have you, they could evolve a theory which perhaps a bit like string theory would be apparently unprovable if they can't get a detector sensitive enough. But in theory, the Large Hadron Collider could detect some of it. They already have a lot of it. They're just not aware of what they're looking at. As I put it, they are very elegantly explaining a statue, not realizing that the statue is actually aware and looking at them. But that's not for this video. The main point about this video is that science, given the way it's operating from a limited experience-based or experimentally based model, could come up with a theory of consciousness, and they still would be rejecting the things that were beyond their ability to detect, but they would at least be taking the first steps into something that an ordinary housewife or guy like myself can detect, simply because we're not so closed-minded. So that's that for this video.